So, welcome back to the Champ of Champions NFL tournament. This is the ultimate what if battle to determine the greatest Super Bowl champion of all time. So, for those of you just tuning in, here's the quick refresher. We took 59 Super Bowl winning teams, seeded them based on their SRS rating, and that's basically their point differential adjusted for strength of schedule, and then we simulated every matchup using whatifsports.com to see who comes out on top. So each game was run at a full simulation with historical rosters, real coaching tendencies, and even home field adjustments. Now that the first round is complete, here's how today's video will break down. First, we're going to recap round one results for each region. Then we'll highlight the top performances, the best offensive teams, the closest games, and yes, even the biggest choke jobs. Finally, we'll preview round two, where the battles only get tougher and the field gets even tighter. So let's dive in and see who survived the opening round of this epic showdown. All right, so let's take a look at the recap in the North, and we're going to start with our first matchup, which is going to be the 2002 Bucks versus the 1976 Raiders, and this one wasn't even close. The 0-2 Bucks came out swinging and never looked back. They basically smacked around the 76 Raiders like it was personal. Mike Allstar ran wild for about 128 yards and a house call, while Brad Johnson carved up the secondary with 2 touchdowns to Keenan McCardle. So meanwhile, the Raiders offense looked like it was stuck in the mud. They were 1 of 11 on third down in this football game. Stabler got sacked 3 times, and the Tampa defense played outstanding. So final score there was 27-9, and it wasn't even close. Now, the next matchup, 2009 Saints versus the 2015 Broncos. This one looked close at first until it didn't. So the 2009 Saints came in with Drew Brees slinging, but it was the ground game that stole the show here. Pierre Thomas went off for 153 rushing yards and 232-yard house calls. Add in a Reggie Bush 65-yard burner, and the Saints racked up over 220 on the ground. The Broncos clawed back with a touchdown from Peyton and a long run by C.J. Anderson, but New Orleans pulled away late, sealing it 32-17, and the 2015 Broncos legendary defense gets torched. Let's move on to the next matchup. It's going to be the 2021 Rams versus the 2010 Packers. Now, this one was a heavyweight slugfest. Aaron Rodgers basically threw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, but a huge pick with 2 minutes left in the fourth flips the field for Matt Gay's game-winning field goal as time expired. The 2021 Rams clawed back from they were down 21-6 with a mix of a Sony Michel 108 rushing yards and a momentum-shifting safety. So Rodgers ran one in late, but the Rams answered with a Stafford to Higbee drive and the clutch kick from Matt Gay. Final score 34-31 in a Rams thriller. Now moving on to the next matchup, which is going to be the 1984 49ers versus the 2007 Giants. And this one was a chess match. But Montana's precision versus Eli's grit, and in the end, it was vintage Joe Cool. The Giants rode Brandon Jacobs like a battering ram, so he had 2 touchdowns and 95 yards, but Montana answered with a late drive, hitting Earl Cooper for the game winner in the fourth. The Giants actually outgained and outpossessed the Niners, but missed the field goal, had a key sack, and one Montana dagger was all it took for the 49ers. So they win 21-14. Now moving on to the 1993 Cowboys versus the 1984 Washington Redskins. And this one was close for only about a minute. As you can see, the 84 Redskins struck first with a late second quarter touchdown, but the Cowboys answered instantly, then never looked back. Emmitt Smith basically bulldozed his way to 134 yards, and Darryl Johnston ripped off a 39-yard score that broke Washington's spirit. Aikman didn't need to be flashy, just efficient, and Eddie Murray nailed 3 field goals to pad the lead. So final score there was 23-7, and the 93 Cowboys advance. Now, moving on to the 2017 Eagles versus the 1990 Giants. So if you love defense and ugly offense, this one was your masterpiece. The 90 Giants couldn't find the end zone if you gave them a map, and the 2017 Eagles didn't look much better, except for Jay Ajayi, who busted loose for about 45-yard touchdown that flipped the game. Add in a couple Jake Elliott bombs and a rare fourth quarter safety, and the Eagles grind out a 15-6 win. Sims and Hostetler both combined for about 0 touchdowns and 2 picks. Philly advances thanks to one big run and a mountain of punts. And for the final game, and one that kind of surprised me, this one felt like a heavyweight brawl, but Joe Flacco comes out throwing haymakers as the 2012 Ravens defeat the 2004 Patriots. Basically, Flacco dropped 3 first-half touchdowns, and the 2012 Ravens had the 04 Pats on the ropes early. But Brady's boys didn't tap. Falk, Pass, and Cobb each found the end zone to claw back within striking distance. Still, Flacco's calm, Tucker's leg, and two New England fumbles were the difference in this one. Ravens 27, Patriots 21. Baltimore punching their ticket to the next round. All right, so now let's check into the North and its best performances. As you can see, basically from the last slide, the highest scoring team is going to be the Los Angeles Rams. They dropped 34 points, basically came back from 21 to 6 down, and put up 34 behind Stafford, Sony Michel, and a walk-off field goal. What about most dominant defense? As we're giving out awards for each region, just for round one. The most dominant defense was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We thought from 0-2. It held the 1976 Raiders to 1 of 11 on third down, sacked Stabler 3 times, and allowed just 9 points in a blowout. Now, for one of the closest games, we thought this was going to be the 2021 Rams against the 2010 Packers. 34-31, back and forth shootout, last second game winning field goal, and Rodgers threw for 300 plus. Rams rallied late, and it was really an instant classic when you're looking back at this tournament. Now, what about the biggest upset? Well, biggest upset, I think we would say it's the 2012 Ravens over the 2004 Patriots when you're talking about seeding. 27-21, the Ravens dropped them. Flacco drops 3 touchdowns early. Ravens outplay a 14-2 Belichick Brady squad, forcing 2 turnovers and winning the trenches. And I would just like to say, on a side note, I thought that 04 Patriots was the best Patriots team of all the teams that won the Super Bowl when it comes to the New England teams. I just thought that Patriots team, that 04, when I know I said it in the introductory video, I thought that they were going to be one of the favorites to win this whole thing. And that's why it's one of our most surprising eliminations. It's basically a dynasty. I think that this was the squad that Brady really found himself. He became a top tier talent in the NFL, or was on the precipice of that. And I just think that 04 team is one of the better of the New England teams that won the Super Bowl. Now, get your popcorn ready moment. This is the Grandstand Sports Day to get your popcorn ready moment. It's just basically the best moment that we thought in this specific portion of the bracket, and it was the Aaron Rodgers pick. We thought the Aaron Rodgers, he throwing that unthinkable pick. Let me set the scene for you. Game tied, 2 minutes left, right after the 2-minute warning, ball in his hand. This was supposed to be vintage Rodgers. Instead, a pick right when the 2010 Packers were driving for the win. Rodgers forced one into traffic, and the Rams made him pay. All right, so round one is in the books, and it delivered everything, right? Especially in this portion of the bracket. Blowouts, nail biters, upsets, and then that one Rodgers pick that none of us are going to probably forget throughout this tournament. But now it's time for the real action to start. We're coming into that second round, and let's show you the first matchup for the North in that second round. It's going to be the 0-2 Bucks and their legendary defense going toe-to-toe with that 1991 Washington juggernaut, right? Two of the nastiest defenses ever. Who is going to break first? That's going to be the question. Let's move on to the second matchup, and going to be the winner of that last matchup that we just talked about. It's the 2009 Saints, who just lit up the Broncos, and they're going to now face the 2021 Rams, who clawed past Rodgers and the Pack in a thriller. So expect fireworks in this matchup. Next matchup after that will be a straight-up throwback brawl. You're going to have the 84 Niners versus the 93 Cowboys. You got Joe Cool versus Emmett's Hammer, right? This might be the most iconic matchup yet. And then finally, we got that 2012 Ravens bring that nasty edge and that grind fest mentality to the 2017 Eagles, who just dragged the Giants through a trench war, right? You're only going to expect violence in this matchup. The field is getting tighter, the pressure is getting real, and there is no easy outs left. So let's move on to the other portions of the bracket. All right, so let's recap the West region here, and you can see we have our first matchup. We have the 1968 Jets versus the 2019 Chiefs. This was an old school grit met modern fireworks in this one, right? We have Namath and the 68 Jets. They controlled the tempo almost throughout the whole game. They ran for 160 yards and led 16-10 with just seconds left. But in classic Mahomes fashion, the Chiefs went full throttle. Sammy Watkins hauls in a touchdown with 10 seconds to go, and the 2019 Chiefs, they escape with a 17-16 win. Joey's boys outplayed him for 59 minutes, but that last one is all it took for Patty Mahomes. We're going to move on to the second matchup. It's going to be the 1992 Dallas Cowboys versus the 2022 Kansas City Chiefs. This was two dynasties, two outstanding quarterbacks, but one Emmitt Smith. The 2022 Chiefs rallied behind Mahomes, racking up 258 passing yards and a late 72-yard bomb to Juju, but it just wasn't enough. The 92 Cowboys controlled the trenches, and Emmitt Smith stole the show, catching 2 touchdowns and busting loose for a 74-yard score in the fourth quarter. Mahomes nearly pulled off the comeback, but Dallas hangs on 24-21 in the Battle of the Legends. That's going to move us on to the 2001 Patriots versus the 1994 San Francisco 49ers. It was too much Young, too much Waters, and too much 49ers. Tom Brady got the Patriots on the board early, but the 1994 49ers rattled off 20 straight points in the second quarter behind Steve Young's precision passing and a short score from William Floyd. Doug Bryan added 4 field goals, and Ricky Waters earned Player of the Game honors with 81 tough rushing yards and a big reception. Brady had 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 picks as San Francisco controlled the tempo and eliminated the Patriots. Now, let's move on to our 1980s versus the 1969 Chiefs. 1980 Raiders versus the 1969 Chiefs. This was defense, field goals, and a classic AFC basically war. It was the 69 Chiefs. They jumped out to a 13-0 lead behind a short touchdown run by Robert Holmes. Also, Oakland fought back in the second half. Plunkett hit Branch for a score, and Ted Hendricks wreaked havoc on defense with 2 sacks and a pick, but the comeback fell short. The Chiefs hang on 16-10, and they advance to the next round. This is going to lead us to the next matchup, which is the 1971 Cowboys versus the 1974 Steelers, and the Cowboys survive this defensive slugfest. It was a gritty defensive battle. The 71 Cowboys edged out the 74 Steelers 17-13 behind a late touchdown strike from Craig Morton to Bob Hayes, who earned Player of the Game honors. The Cowboys' ground game, led by Dwayne Thomas, 133 yards. He controlled the clock while their defense sacked Steelers quarterback 6 times. Bradshaw did get hurt, and Gilliam had to come in, and they combined only for 156 passing yards. And despite Franco Harris tying in the third, Dallas pulled ahead for good in the fourth. So the Cowboys will be moving on. Now, let's jump to the 2016 Patriots versus the 1977 Cowboys. This was Brady, Blount. It was basically power Pats past the Staubach Cowboy in a dominant win. The 2016 New England Patriots rolled past the 77 Cowboys 26-7 in a game defined by Tom Brady's precision and LeGarrette Blount's ground dominance. He had 131 yards and a touchdown. After a slow start, New England outscored Dallas 23-0 the final 3 quarters. Brady threw for 206 and had 2 TDs, while the defense smothered Staubach and forced 3 fumbles. The Cowboys managed just 92 passing yards and couldn't recover after an early 7-0 lead. So the Patriots will be moving on from that 2016 team. All right, so let's move on to the awards for the West now. And some of our best performances. We're going to start out with the highest scoring team, and it's 2 here. We got the 1994 49ers and the 2016 Patriots. So you had Bill Belichick's defense lets up the most in one game, but then he delivers the most in another. Well, what about the most dominant defense? This is going to go to the 71 Cowboys. They sacked the Steelers quarterback 6 times in that football game and held them to 2.1 yards per carry and shut them down late. It was absolute domination for the 71 Cowboys. Now let's move on to the closest game. This one was a thrill. It was 2019 Chiefs versus the 68 Jets, and the Chiefs pulled off the 17-16 win with a touchdown in the final 10 seconds. Now, what was the biggest upset here? We had none. There was no upsets, but all the higher seeds basically won, which will move on to our most surprising elimination, which will be the 77 Cowboys. Definitely should have put a better fight against what I would consider one of the weakest New England Patriots teams to win a Super Bowl. Now, our last one, the Grandstand Sports Data. Get your popcorn ready moment. It's going to be the Mahomes to Watkins with only 10 seconds remaining. So down by 6, facing elimination and nearly out of time, Mahomes did what only Mahomes can do. He dropped a dime to Sammy Watkins in the corner of the end zone with 10 ticks left on the clock to steal the win from Joe Namath's Jets. So one play, one moment, and that was the margin in that game. Now, we're going to move on to the preview here. We have the basically round one's in the books. We had absolute chaos in this bracket, or in this portion of the bracket. Now we want to touch on the second round matchups. It's going to get even better. Let's start with that first one. It's going to be that steel curtain of the 75 Steelers taking on Mahomes and the explosive 19 Chiefs. Can brute force stop modern fireworks, or will the new school dethrone the old kings? Let's move on to the next matchup and who will be playing the winner in that matchup. And it's going to be the 92 Cowboys. They're going to meet the high-flying 94 49ers. It's going to be Aikman versus Young in a battle of the NFC powerhouses that couldn't have been a Super Bowl. Now it's just a second-round matchup. Now, let's move on to the 69 Chiefs. They look to slow down the surge in 71 Cowboys, who just knocked off the steel curtain. Their defense, grit, and history collide in this classic showdown. And then to round it out, who will be playing the winner of those teams? Well, it's going to be the 66 Packers. They will be taking on the 2016 Patriots. You have Lombardi versus Belichick. You have Bart Starr versus Brady. Legacy is meeting legacy, and only one can move on. So that field's getting tighter. You know this bracket's going to be, squeezed into about 16 teams in about a week. So pretty good here from the West. You got a good mix of those 90s teams, but then you also have some of those old school teams from the 70s. All right, so now that we're talking about the recaps, we're going to jump to the East region now. And in that first matchup in the East that we recap, we're going to talk about the 98 Broncos versus 78 Steelers. It was Terrell Davis and him leading the Broncos past that steel curtain in this bruising battle. The 98 Denver Broncos held off a late rally by the 78 Steelers, winning 23-16 behind a punishing ground game and clutch defense. Terrell Davis, he racked up 99 yards and a touchdown, while Derek Lovell added another score. So Denver used a 13-point third quarter to take control, and then Jason Elam had third field goal sealed it in the fourth quarter. So Terry Bradshaw, he had two touchdowns, but they just weren't enough, and Pittsburgh's last minute score came too late. So Broncos move on there. We're going to talk about the other Broncos team that was a year right before them. That's the 97 Broncos taking on the 06 Colts. Terrell Davis basically steamrolled again, this time against the Colts with 250-yard masterpiece. The 97 Broncos dominated the trenches and the clock. They crushed the 06 Colts 34-17 behind an explosive 250-yard, two-touchdown performance from Terrell Davis. Denver rushed for 326 total yards in this matchup, controlling possession for almost nearly 40 minutes. Von Hebron chipped in two scores, and the Broncos defense held Peyton Manning without a touchdown. So there you go. The Broncos will be moving on both of their back-to-back championship teams. Now, let's move on to the 2014 Pats playing on the 2018 Pats. You're talking about Brady versus Brady. 2014 edition, though, he outdueled the 2018 in this Foxborough feud here. The 2014 Pats held off a late push from the 18 Pats to win a star-studded battle 30-20. Brady threw for a touchdown and 209 yards for that 14 squad, while his 2018 counterpart racked up 321 yards and a touchdown of his own. But it just wasn't enough. The difference here was red zone execution, clock control, and that relentless Gostkowski. He had three field goals for each side, but some of them on the 2014 side did matter more. Now, let's move on to the 79 Steelers taking on the 2023 Chiefs. You have the steel curtain crushing in the modern magic, right? It's the Chiefs who were held scoreless for three quarters. You're talking about the 79 Steelers flexed their old school muscle and shut down the reigning champs from 2023 in a gritty 20-9 win. Harris rumbled for 154 yards, and the steel curtain defense harassed Mahomes all night with 6 sacks and constant pressure all day. So they will be moving on. Let's move on to the 03 Pats playing the 95 Boys. And we're talking about Brady outdueling Aikman as 2003 Patriots dominate the classic Cowboys. The 03 Pats, they made a statement here. They dismantled the 95 Cowboys 27-9 with a near flawless performance from Tom Brady, who threw for 299 yards and 2 touchdowns. Daniel Graham hauled in both scores, while the Patriots defense stifled Emmitt Smith and kept Michael Irvin out of the end zone. So New England will be moving on in that matchup. Now, let's move on to the 67 Packers versus the 2024 Eagles. Saquon sparks a fourth quarter comeback for the ages, right? Doesn't that sound familiar? Down 16-7 at halftime, the 24 Eagles rode Saquon's 127 rushing yards and a 49-yard catch and run touchdown to ignite a 13-point final quarter. Jake Elliott had 2 clutch field goals, one with 1 minute and 39 seconds left in the game, and that basically sealed it. While Philly's defense stuffed Bart Starr on two late possessions, that was huge for them. Basically, the Ice Bowl champs controlled the first half with Don Chandler's leg, but Saquon's dual threat heroics flipped the script late. Now let's move on to that last matchup between the 2013 Seahawks versus the 2011 Giants, and it was just the Legion of Boom dominating, and then Golden Tate delivering. The 13 Seahawks showed no mercy in this one. After falling behind 6-0, Seattle dropped 16 unanswered in the second quarter, including a safety and a 50-yard bomb from Russell to Doug Baldwin. Golden Tate added two rushing touchdowns, and Marshawn Lynch pounded in another. Seattle's defense held Eli to 163 yards and a pick, while Wilson finished a perfect 10 for 10 passing. So they really didn't need his arm in that game, and they end up moving on 33-13. All right, so in this portion of the bracket, who are we gonna give awards to? Who played outstanding? What was it? What was the highest team? Let's start with that. The highest scoring team in this bracket will be the 97 Denver Broncos. They dropped 34 points against those '06 Colts. Talk about Terrell Davis. He basically went nuclear. He had 250 yards in that football game, and the Broncos rolled 34-17. Now, let's talk about the most dominant defense. It was the 79 Steelers. They held those 23 Chiefs scoreless for three full quarters. 6 sacks, constant pressure, and a complete control over Mahomes until garbage time. The steel curtain is still real. Let's move on to one of the closest games, though, and that's going to be the 67 Packers versus the 24 Eagles. It's a close matchup, 20-16. A fourth quarter comeback capped by a clutch kick, and then also Saquon's heroics. It's pretty good there for that football game. It was a great nail biter. Now, we want to talk about the biggest upset. It's going to be the '03 Patriots over the '95 Cowboys. I thought the '95 Cowboys were going to be a real competitor in this tournament, but Brady and Belichick, they dismantled the triplets. The triplets era in the Cowboys, dominating every stat line in a total tone setter moving forward in this tournament. Next, we're going to talk about the most surprising elimination. I think it's the '06 Indianapolis Colts. Talking about Peyton and his high-powered offense at that time. They basically got bulldozed by the Denver's run game, and then they couldn't even find the end zone through the air. So a little bit of a disappointment there. Now, if you're talking about grandstand sports day to get your popcorn ready moment, what would you think it is? It's going to be the Saquon Barkley 49-yard catch and run touchdown against the 67 Packers. With the Eagles trailing in the fourth, Saquon explosive play completely flipped the momentum, igniting a 13-point quarter and sealing one of the most thrilling comebacks of round one. All right, so since round one's in the books for the East side, we're going to start to take a look at the round two preview. What teams will be facing each other and who will be falling and being eliminated from this tournament. We're going to start with the first matchup. You got the 85 Bears. You got the heavyweight 85 Bears. That defense taking on the explosive 98 Broncos in their MVP ground game. Will the monsters of the Midway shut down Elway and, TD, or will Denver punch holes in the history? Next game, who will be playing the winner of those two teams? Well, it's a battle of the back-to-back champions. The '97 Broncos face the 2014 Patriots, and what might be the ultimate chess match? Clock control versus clinical execution. Something's got to give in this matchup. Next up, we got two of the grittiest teams in the field. So they basically square off here. It's the '03 Patriots, fresh off an upset, going head to head with the bruising 1979 Steelers. It's going to be Brady versus that steel curtain defense. It's going to be a clash of culture, grit, and guts. Can't wait for that matchup. And finally, a modern day war here. It's going to be the 24 Eagles, led by Saquon's Magic, face off against the 2013 Seahawks and that Legion of Boom. So can Philly's firepower crack one of the nastiest defenses in the 21st century? Something that you got to stay tuned for. Hit that subscribe button. So we're getting to the nitty gritty here when it comes to crowning the champ of champions. And from here on out, every snap is going to matter. All right, so let's move on to the South, and this is the final portion of the bracket, or the final region, we can call it. We're going to start with the first matchup. It's going to be the 2000 Ravens versus the '86 Giants. The defense has basically lived up to the billing in this one, but one kicker stole the show, and that was Matt Stover. He was money in this game. He hit 5 field goals, one of them including a clutch 47-yarder late to ice it. The '86 Giants, their offense kind of showed flashes in this one, especially Bobby Lee Johnson. He had a 121-yard performance, but the 4 interceptions from Phil Simms really cost this team, and Baltimore moves on, winning 22-13. Let's move on to that 49er versus 49er matchup now. We have the 89 team versus the 81 team. Same franchise, different eras, same quarterback, different outcome. The 89 49ers reminded the 81 team that Joe Montana got even better with age, and Montana went 18 for 28 for 265 yards and a touchdown, while Roger Craig exploded for 145 rushing yards and two touchdowns for that 89 team. And they absolutely, I want to say that's the biggest, largest margin of victory that we've seen in the tournament so far. Now, let's move on to the 88 49ers taking on the 72 Dolphins. This was Montana Cool and Kofor just clutch. The perfect season had to stay in 1972 for this one. Montana threw for two touchdowns in the second quarter and led a last minute drive that set up an insurance field goal, basically a 46-yarder by Mike Kofor. Miami's legendary ground game kept them alive, but three lost fumbles and a lack of late game explosiveness sealed their fate. Now, let's move on to the 99 Rams taking on the 1987 Redskins. The greatest show on turf basically puts on a shutout show, right? Warner threw three touchdown passes, Falk broke a 55-yard dagger run, and the 99 Rams dismantled the Redskins with 33 unanswered points. The 87 Washington offense moved the ball but came up empty on every drive, falling victim to six sacks and two picks. So that greatest show on turf will be moving on, and they could be looking scary, especially pitching shutouts out here. Now we're going to talk about the '08 Steelers taking on the '83 Raiders. You're talking about the, I guess you would call it Steel Curtain 2.0, shuts out the silver and black. Roethlisberger spread the ball around for 243 yards and a touchdown, while Jeff Reed drilled three field goals to keep the scoreboard ticking. Pittsburgh defense swarmed Jim Plunkett all game, sacking him four times and holding Marcus Allen to only 23 rushing yards. That's huge defensive performance there by the '08 Steelers. Now, let's move on to the 2020 Bucks taking on the 2005 Pittsburgh Steelers. This was Big Ben basically outdueling Brady in a defensive slugfest. Roethlisberger tossed for two touchdowns, including a crucial strike to Hines Ward just before halftime. Pittsburgh's defense also forced two turnovers and kept Tom Brady's Bucks scoreless in the whole second half of the game. Willie Parker also led the charge with 91 all-purpose yards and a receiving touchdown. And now the Steelers will be moving on with a 14-10 victory over those Bucks, and just that round out the whole tournament here. So this is the last first round matchup. 73 Dolphins taking on the 70 Colts. The Dolphins hang on after early explosion. Miami jumped out to about a 14 to nothing first quarter lead with a long Mercury Morris touchdown run and then a short Greasy to Briscoe strike, but the 70 Colts clawed back, holding the Dolphins scoreless in three quarters, and then a fourth quarter field goal made it 14 to 10, but then time ran out on Mr. Unitas. So the Dolphins will be moving on with a 14 to 10 victory over those Baltimore Colts. All right, so for every region, we got to give you the awards. And here are the best performances for the teams. We're going to start with the highest scoring team, and that's going to be the 89 49ers. This was probably the most impressive team through the tournament so far, or through the first round of the tournament. They had the biggest margin of victory. They played, a pretty decent squad in themselves in the 1981 team. You got to watch out for them moving forward. This looks like they are a juggernaut. Now, moving on to the most dominant defense, and this is crazy. This is a little ironic. It's the 99 Rams. They shut out the 1987 Redskins 33 to nothing. They forced six sacks and two interceptions, and then they got that high-powered offense on the other side. They are going to be a huge contender as well. Now, let's move on to the closest game. This was the 2005 Steelers versus the 2020 Bucks. A gritty team from the mid 2000s takes down a Tom Brady led Bucks squad and it is expected to go deep. So please watch out for them too. We have for their biggest upset, we have the 88 49ers over the 72 Dolphins. And that's Montana and company and Miami's perfect season. I guess you could call that the biggest upset. It really was when we compared the differences between SRS. It was the biggest upset for that portion of the bracket, so the South region. Most surprising elimination, we're going to stay in the same, with the same team. It's the NFL's only unbeaten team, and they exit very early, basically in their first matchup. And then for the Grandstand Sports Day to get your popcorn ready moment, nothing really happened here, so we're going to have to go with the Mike Kofor insurance field goal. Really. All right, so just like for every other region, we got to break down the round two preview. And right here in the South, you're going to have that first matchup of the 1996 Green Bay Packers taking on the 2000 Ravens. This is going to be Favre versus the Fortress, right? The high-flying 96 Packers bring firepower, but can they crack one of the greatest defenses ever assembled? Ray Lewis and the Ravens are licking their chops to figure that one out. Next one, and who's going to take on the winner of that matchup? Well, this is going to be a great matchup on its own, and this is going to be the 89 Niners versus the 88 Niners. Talking about Montana versus Montana. The back-to-back Niners squads collide in a battle for franchise supremacy. Will it be the 88 team with the clutch DNA or the 89 juggernaut that blew out everyone in its path? Now, let's go to the next one. It's the 99 Rams versus the '08 Steelers. It's the greatest show on turf versus the Steel Curtain 2.0. Can Warner and Fox speed past Troy Polamalu in that relentless Steelers defense, or will Big Ben and company bring the Rams crashing down to earth? Those are questions that need to be answered. And while they're being answered, we're going to give you the final matchup, which is the '05 Steelers versus the 1973 Dolphins. You're talking about two old school squads here, right? One spot in the Elite Eight. Big Ben and the rugged 2005 Steelers just squeezed past Brady, but now face the balanced, methodical, and 73 Dolphins who are quietly building momentum. So there's only 8 teams remaining here in the South. Every play now is going to matter. Every inch is going to be earned. And let's move on. And that wraps up round one of the Champ of Champions tournament, but we're just getting started here. Round two is loaded with absolute juggernauts, and the matchups, those are even nastier. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Also, drop a comment down below and let us know which team shocked you, which team disappointed you, and who do you think is going to go all the way? That's the most important question. So, the next episode is going to drop soon. Don't miss that. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.